straight from the heart. Author, Crooked Arrow. Illustrator, Crooked Arrow. Not that long ago, in one of the oldest zoos in the world, there was the awaited birth of several gorilla babies. These babies would be the first group of babies that would get to grow up in a gorilla-enclosed environment that was close to natural as the zoo could afford to build. Most other gorillas of the time that were born in zoos lived behind cages that had break-proof glass around them. They were very cold, unfriendly conditions for any animal to survive in. In the great ape habitat area was born several baby apes, and among them was a very tiny female ape named Karua. This creature, for an ape, seemed to be very different than the other babies. It was not only her tiny size that made her different, but her quiet, gentle personality that seemed to just catch the viewer's eyes. As all the little animals in the zoo grew, the day came when they were old enough to leave their mother's side for brief moments at a time to play with each other. Karua never ventured too far from her mother's side. Karua's mom was an extremely protective gorilla. Most young apes at this tender age began moving more away from their mothers as their curiosity impelled them to explore their environment while they played. Karua didn't want to play. Instead, she just sat and observed everything and everyone. She carefully studied the other animals in the zoo and the humans that interacted with them while they cared for them. She even watched the humans of all ages that came to visit the zoo and look at the animals. Karua observed that, whenever babies were born in the zoo, the humans fussed over them and cared deeply about their well-being. That was one reason why they kept the mothers and babies away from the public peering eyes until they were sure the young one was going to survive. Karua was still a very delicate creature who did not interact much with the other young apes, because they were very rough with their play and much bigger than she was. So as time went by and she grew, Karua still spent most of her time observing things and everyone as if she was making a mental diary of all life and how they interacted with each other. By the time Karua had reached the age of that compared to a teenager, her mother and some other adult animals were being transferred to live at other zoos. This brought great sadness to Karua, for she would never see her mother again. Karua was still a very small ape for her age. By now she was still no bigger than a human teenager. Because of her size, the other apes would not interact with her. The zookeepers were afraid that the larger gorillas might someday harm her because she no longer had her mother around to protect her from them. The zookeepers decided to move Karua to her own small habitat area. An area where they used to put sick pregnant apes while they awaited the arrival of their newborn. This would now become Karua's private home. The area used to have protective glass around it. They removed the glass and put up a fence so that it would be a more natural environment. With no other creature but the zookeeper to interact with, Karua would climb to the highest point of her habitat, and from there she would continue her observation of everything. Her main interest now was totally devoted to observing humans. Karua keenly observed how both very young animals and young humans radiated with this immense glow of unconditional love, willing to share with each other no matter who they were. They seemed to love everything and everyone. They did not distinguish or judge like the older creatures. People reacted different towards babies, and so did the animals. Their unconditional love seemed to be infectious. Through her constant observation of humans, she noticed that different changes were taking place as humans grew older. Many times this change had an effect on the other creatures, as if an invisible silent signal went out and just changed the mood of animals as they were in the area of where angry humans were. The more this hostile vibration went out from humans, the more violent the animals became as the vibration seemed to irritate them. Karua's habitat was designed to allow her to have a view of the entire zoo along with the neighborhood outside the zoo walls. Because of her high rocky areas, it was a good place to sit and just watch everything. This was not normal activity for an ape, but Karua was really fascinated by the many behavioral changes she saw in humans. Karua spent a lot of time observing this one group of boys. From her lookout on her high cliff, she watched as 3 small joyful babies slowly developed. As young children, she noticed that they still were caring individuals who still enjoyed helping others. Time passed and the boys were now young teenagers. She watched as they somehow lost that wonderful loving quality as they began to allow all kinds of things to influence them. They became the neighborhood bullies with no care for anyone or anything. They became a very prejudiced little angry group. One day while she sat and observed the teenage bullies, she saw a small puppy come near where they were talking. Next thing you know, these boys started throwing stones at the little creature, as he tried desperately to get away from them. The poor frightened creature ran out into the street just as a car came speeding down the street. The poor puppy was hit by the car as the car kept on going. The boys who watched stood there and laughed at what took place. This showed Karua that these boys no longer had it in them to show unconditional love, for their hearts were bitter cold. The small creature desperately hobbled to its feet, but one leg was hurt really bad. As it limped across the street towards the zoo, the puppy looked back and saw that one of the boys was yelling and making his way towards him. The boy wanted to torment the puppy some more. Karua's heart went out to the poor creature as she hurried down from her cliff. When she got to the fence, she saw that the boys were in hot pursuit behind the puppy. Sticking her arm through the fence, she motioned to the puppy to come to her, while making kissing sounds with her mouth. The boys were now in front of Karua's home as they began shouting for her to release the puppy. Karua hid the puppy and then climbed to the top of some rocks where she beat her chest and made loud noises which frightened the boys away. Once Karua knew the boys were gone, she came down from the rocks and brought the puppy out of its hiding. Karua then gently cuddled the puppy as she rocked it to sleep in her arms. At that moment, everyone that was watching saw for the first time a special radiant glow about the gorilla, as she showed all of them what unconditional love was all about. After that day, everyone came to see Karua and her little friend. She slowly nursed the puppy back to health, and from her heart she shared everything with him. Soon the word got out to the newspapers, and everyone was talking about the ape and the dog. The newspaper story about Karua brought more visitors to the zoo, wanting the chance to see her and the puppy. The vibration of unconditional love that poured out from Karua's heart seemed to radiate to all who visited her area, as they watched her and the puppy play together. People started talking about how the energy that came from watching Karua seemed to help change their lives for the better. Even the 3 boys began visiting Karua on regular basis. Slowly her influence on them helped change them into wonderful, loving adults. One boy became a firefighter, another became an animal doctor, while the third one became an animal photographer who shared his work with school children, helping to teach them about coming from the heart. The puppy grew up and spent many loving years with Karua. It died many years ago, but at the ripe old age of 61, Karua has been one of the best gifts to the world. She still is a great example for everyone on how to keep the positive vibration of unconditional love going around the world by coming straight from your heart. The end.